Hello everyone, Vanguard of Valor here, and welcome to There Was A Caveman. So, this is a retro-inspired action platformer by Norris Amatnieks. It's a one-person job. Apparently he's been working on this game over a year now, and it's just coming out tomorrow on Steam on November 8th, which is the day after I'm recording this. And it is a fairly interesting little game here. I have played it for about an hour now, not counting some failed recording times that I've messed up on here. But it's interesting. I have definitely got some opinions on it now, but when I received a code for the game from the developer, I thought, you know what, I really liked some other action platformers, retro-inspired games like this, like Volgar the Viking. I got way into that game. So I thought, you know what, why not give it a try, and we'll see what it's all about. So, we're going to take a look at it now, and I'm going to talk about some of the things I think about it, and we'll see what conclusions we come to. So, let us take a quick peek in the options menu. We've got VSync audio controls. Are these rebindable? Yes, they are. Fantastic. Because that is probably going to be useful for some people. I get a little bit confused with the controls sometimes and accidentally hit the wrong ones, which sometimes kills me. But we're going to hop right into the game here, and there are currently 4 levels that I've unlocked. Within a level, there's no checkpoints, but when you clear one, you can go back to it later if you want. And you can always continue on for the later ones. You don't have to beat the whole game in one go, which is always nice. And we're going to head back to the first level and just get a taste for what the caves are all about. So let's jump in here and see how our story begins. We're the caveman on the left. We have a lady with us. A wife, a mother, not quite sure, but she turns into a pile of bones for whatever reason. So we're just going to go on our merry way here because evidently that boulder on the left is blocking the entrance to the cave. Not sure how we got in here, didn't notice that show up, but we're going to deal with it. So this is our caveman fellow. He's got a couple abilities. He can move around with the arrow keys, and he can jump with X. He can smash his significant other's bones with Z and steal her skull. That's our basic club maneuver, which is our primary attack. And we also have a dash with C, which allows us to move a little bit more quickly. Can be done in the air, and you can also double jump. And that's basically what this game comes down to as far as the controls. So, we're going to move through here a little bit and talk on the go as we do what we can. So, as far as the basic controls, they're pretty enjoyable. They're pretty solid. They're, especially in areas like this, they do pretty much what you expect them to, and the only problem I have is I have a tendency to hit dash instead of attack by mistake, but that's just because I'm a dumb and has nothing to do with the actual game design itself. Now on screen, there's a couple things that you can see. We have health in the top left there. Those 3 hearts allow us to take damage from enemies, and they're only replenished by finding hearts like this in levels. As we pick those up, that replenishes 1 heart. If we fall in the lava there, though, that is instant death terrain, and we will immediately die and be sent back to the start of the board there. This is a stone we can pick up. We get 3 every time we pick up one of these power-ups, and they are thrown with S, which allows us to attack at distance. A bunch of different weapons which work in slightly different ways. Some of them are fairly similar. There's a spear, which is very similar in arc to the stone here, but it sticks in walls and makes platforms in a way very similar to Volgar the Viking's spears. And I was talking about the UI here, so it's also worth mentioning that there are skulls that we've been collecting. Every time we kill an enemy, they drop a skull, and sometimes, oh, no, they were dead. Didn't actually hit the right button there, hit attack instead of dash. Like I said, I mix these up all of the time for whatever reason. So, we are instantly dead and sent back to the start of the stage, or at least the start of that board, with all of our additional skulls revoked. No surprise there, otherwise you'd be able to farm them in the level. But we're just going to keep going and see what happens. Now, the game does punish deaths pretty significantly, but not in a way it's easy to notice just yet. We'll come back to that in a minute when we've had a little bit more of a chance to show off exactly where the problem comes from. But for now, we're just going to move onwards and talk about a couple other basic things here. So we're collecting skulls as we go. These are currency, which we can use to buy upgrades at a shop later in the game, which we will take a look at. There are a variety of environmental obstacles as well as just death traps. Like you can see, the stalactites here are dropping on us, but thankfully we're able to manipulate them out of the way. We've picked up some bones. These are more akin to axes in a game like Castlevania, in that you lob them towards your enemies upwards, which gives you a good bit of versatility in your attacks, which is all well and good. Oh. Here we have a mysterious bouncy thing. Not sure what it's supposed to be. but it will bounce us upwards if we step on it, so it'll bring us further into level, and that's good as well. So that's basically the rundown on mechanics here. We can climb on some terrain, there's some areas in which we can swim later on. I did the wrong button again, as I have the tendency to do, but we're going to keep going here, and hopefully we'll be just fine. So, beyond the basic controls here, the art, I think, in this game is pretty good for pixel art as it goes. It's not exceptional, but it's not bad. The environments look particularly nice, in my opinion, compared to the enemy and character models, which are acceptable but not exceptional. This is one of those heart containers which I was talking about that'll give us an additional piece of hit points, which is really good, but only so much. We'll get back into why it's not wonderful in just a second, but for now we're going to keep adventuring. So, let's smash our way through here, and go. And we've made our way to the first shop. So the first shop here is a good indication of why the currency system is a little bit silly. You can buy upgrades, you can buy weapons, so you can buy more rocks or more bones, but if you buy them and then you pick up one of the other upgrade, all of your additional ones that you've purchased are lost. So buying them, if you're not intending to spam them, isn't super helpful to you. You can also buy heart containers for a ton of skulls. It costs 30 here, and we'll buy one because it's the most useful thing in the store. But one of the ways in which the game punishes you for dying is it reduces your heart containers by 1 each time. So you spend 30 skulls on a heart container upgrade that only lasts until you fall into one death pit or die once against a new boss that you've never encountered. So it's not wonderful. It's a little bit of a boost, and if you've practiced the areas like I have, so I know what's coming, it makes it a little bit easier to progress because you'll be a little bit tougher than you might otherwise be. But because of the way it's not kept between attempts, it's really easy to very quickly lose all those extra heart containers and be back on 3, stuck in a nasty position. So that's not wonderful, but it's something worth noting at least. Now, the game does feature a lot of secret locations. Some of them are pretty obvious, like that heart container earlier was pretty clearly hidden in that wall. Some of them are a little bit more sneakily placed, and this one is barely visible at all, except for the fact that this piece of wall texture has a crack in it. So you have to be really paying attention if you want to try and catch them all. So that's a good thing for sure. It's always fun to be able to find secrets in areas that you were not expecting to find them in, so that's always good stuff. Now, the art is pretty good, the controls are pretty good, but there are a couple little things in this game I have a problem with, and the primary one I have a problem with is the music. In this stage it's not too bad, but some of the stages have very repetitive music, especially stage 2. There are some areas in that game, in that stage rather, which have pretty irritatingly repetitive music, at least in my opinion, which is not ideal. So it's kind of unfortunate that that's the case, but so be it. There is another heart container back there. We might go back and get it just for the fun of it, if we can without dying. Picking it up will replenish our health, so it's not like it's actually much of an imposition to come back this way, because grabbing this will immediately heal us back up again. There we go, we're up to 6 heart containers, which is awesome. Of course, on my first time through this area, I played through almost all of it with only 3 heart containers because I'd pick one up and then I would die falling into lava I didn't know was there, or getting knocked off by enemies, or what have you. So, while it is nice to have the ability to get those upgrades, it can be pretty hard to hold on to them sometimes, like we mentioned. Now, let's make our way up here. We're going to try and make our way to the first boss if we can, so we can show off that to you. The bosses in this game are a little bit unusual. Ow. Primarily because of the way they work. The first boss is pretty standard, pattern-based affair, and it's pretty good for that respect. You can learn the patterns and play it pretty well, but some of the other bosses are a little bit more random. Here we are in our boss antechamber. We can tell a boss fight's coming because it gives us this Mega Man-style single room to go through. We can throw some rocks at him, hit him with his own balls of cabbage that he's spitting, and avoiding the stalactites he drops on us as best we can. I'm doing a little bit not great here right now, so we'll have to try and do our best to avoid taking unnecessary damage if we can help it, because we don't want to die, because then we'll have to do this again, and I kind of want to move through here a little bit more quickly, just to show you what else this game is about. But we'll see. The fact that you can reflect these cabbages is pretty important, even though I had no idea you could do it at first. But yeah, some of the boss fights are a little bit random. The second boss in particular is kind of unfortunately random in that The first time I played through him, and the second and the third and the fourth time, I had a pretty big challenge with him. It's a flying boss that you can only hit by picking up bone items, which are occasionally dropped by the boss's minions. And that's fine, except for the fact that it's random whether or not they drop a stone to attack you or a bone to try and kill you. On my 5th or 6th try, I had an instance where all 4 of the pterodactyls that showed up dropped bones, and I was able to just spam the throw button in one phase, instantly killing the boss without him being able to even really attack me. Which was somehow not what I think was intended to happen. So that's kind of unfortunate that sometimes the boss randomness makes the bosses really difficult or extremely easy. So, that's something that's shown up a little bit here. The third boss was also fairly random in the way it attacked, which was a little bit unfortunate as well, not quite as predictable, and I was able to just sort of brute force the boss by trying a couple times and getting a much easier pattern to survive. Now, we're going to take a look here at the lake level. We have a lot of health right now, so this is pretty easy, but don't forget, every time you enter a new level, you're generally coming there right after beating a boss, so if you're going them in order, you're probably going to have 3 heart containers left, because you'll probably have died a couple times, so trying to learn the bosses, and the third stage starts with this. It is a very slow-paced shmup stage, where we're only able to fire rocks out of our pterodactyl at a very slow rate. That's about as fast as they can go, and we have to try and make sure we make it through the stage without dying. So, remember how I said the controls were really good in this game? This stage kind of isn't quite as nice. The pterodactyl section here is kind of slow-paced and not super enjoyable to maneuver through. We're a humongous target, and it's hard to tell where our actual hitbox is, because apparently the head of the pterodactyl is a hitbox, but its lower torso isn't. So we've just taken damage there, and there's no way to really get around that, which is unfortunate. Now, and we're dead, so we gotta try it again now with less hearts. Of course, we have full health now instead of only having 2, so there's a good chance we won't have too much trouble getting through here, but this area is just not as enjoyable as the rest of the game. It's really slow, it's not really as smooth as the rest of it as far as playing goes, and it's just kind of unfortunate. It's not as enjoyable, for me at least. And it's followed up by an underwater section. Now, the underwater section that comes after this is actually kind of cool, in that it has varying paths, unlike the rest of the game, which is pretty linear. You actually have some options about the directions you go, and that's a pretty cool idea. There's a couple different areas in it where you can take more than one route to the level, and that's nice. Now, unfortunately, it also has underwater physics, which means you're really slow all the time. And that's not quite as nice, because being really slow can be pretty frustrating. So here we have a ton of extra health that we might not otherwise have, and we're still having a hard time getting through this area just because of how slow our pterodactyl moves. I'm gonna hop out of here so we don't have to keep doing this over and over again. But yeah, that whole stage is kind of unfortunate because it is just not quite as enjoyable. The boss fight is back on land again, so you have a reasonable control there, but even then, there's a layer of water at the bottom that if you fall into, the controls go wonky, and it's kind of hard to recover if you ever fall in the water in that stage. It's kind of just game over, which is unfortunate. Now, that's kind of my experience with the game so far. The art is pretty good, the controls are decent for the most part, not counting things like that pterodactyl control section. Under the water they're a little bit slow. The levels are mostly linear, with a little bit of varied paths in the underwater stage, and potentially further than that, because I've only played through the first 3 stages in the first hour or so that I've played so far. The bosses are fairly random, which means that sometimes they're extremely easy, and sometimes they're extremely hard. The random death terrain kind of makes the health upgrades not as valuable, and the fact that they're removed every time you die means that if you're having a hard time or playing through the area for the first time, the game's really difficult, but once you've learned the areas, you can farm health on them, which makes the game significantly easier in some respects. And overall, it's a solid enough game, especially to have been made by a single developer, but it's not anything I would call particularly groundbreaking. If you are interested in checking it out after what you've seen here, I will put links in the description to 2 different things. One is the store page for Steam, where it'll be about $7 with a, standard 10% discount on release if you're interested in buying the whole thing. But if you're interested in trying out, I believe just the first stage in an earlier version of the game is uploaded on GameJolt.com. So I'll put a link to that so you can try it out for free, a sort of demo if you're interested. And beyond that, this has been Vanguard of Valor, and welcome to There Was a Caveman. Until next time, bye-bye.